Detective Greg Leonard, Tag Task Force, and the Ashtabula County Sheriff's Office.
Mark Broughton, Manager, Pymatuning State Park.
Steve Sargent from the Samaritan House in Ashtabula.
Good morning. Just to give you a little background reference to the Kids and Cops Campout, in the fall of 2016, there was a lot of contention between law enforcement and the minority community, and well, myself actually walking at Pymatuning State Park, although I was on the Pennsylvania side. God put it on my heart to this camp out came to mind. And the first person I picked up the phone, actually where I was still walking, and contacted County Prosecutor Nick Irochi. Talked to him a little bit again with the idea, and he thought it was a very good idea. And I then called Chris Cahill, who also is with TAG in the Geneva Police Department, and talked to him about it, and made a couple other phone calls concerning the camp out. When the thought first comes to mind, you don't really understand the undertaking that it has become. But with that being said, with having a lot of other great people to assist with this, it actually went very well. The 2017 camp out, we had 28 kids. We had assistance from various law enforcement agencies, with Steve and with Mark. Pymatuning State Park basically cordoned off a third of the campground down there and said, this is yours. And you know, none of this would be happening if it wasn't for Pymatuning State Park and Mark, that have been very generous. They've not only did they mark off a portion of the campground, but they delivered us firewood. They did the setting up for all of the training from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources as far as the canoeing, the archery, the fishing. Like I said, if it wasn't for the state park and the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, we probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. But like I said, we had 28 kids last year. Primarily they were from Ashtabula County, but we had a couple, or one I believe from Trumbull County and maybe one from Lake County. The fact that this is a TAG sponsored event, we are trying this year to include Trumbull County a little bit more. Our goal originally was to have 25 kids from Trumbull County and 25 kids from Ashtabula County participating. We're still working towards that. We're far beyond our deadline, our initial deadline, to get these kids lined up, but they're trickling in. To go back to what they do, basically we have the event runs between May 18th and May 20th of 2018 this year. That is the weekend before Memorial Day. And we basically have a schedule for these kids to participate in all different types of outdoor activities and also education. Steve did a great church service on Sunday morning last year, and we're going to ask him to do that again. But they are taught archery, they are taught fishing, canoeing. They are brought out on Pymatuning Lake for pontoon boat rides. They are brought to Linesville to feed the fish. They are also given the opportunity to do some craft work. We had white T-shirts, and the naturalist at the state park basically they had rubber fish and then paint, and then the kids would press the different fish that are actually found in Pymatuning Lake. They press them on the T-shirt and make their own T-shirts. The kids also are supplied with an event T-shirt, which has all the sponsors on the back and our logo, like on this cup, or on this bottle, excuse me. A lot of these kids are never given the opportunity, or never have the opportunity to get outside and spend a weekend in a tent, or to cook hot dogs over a fire or marshmallows over a fire. So it just, to me, it's been probably in my 35-year career, this has probably been the most rewarding thing that I've ever been involved in. I appreciate these two gentlemen, our probation department here, Brett Kaiser and Olivia Springer, especially for being part of this, because our probation department has taken over complete control of the food end of this, and that is a large responsibility. Again, what is making this work is that everybody is taking part. A lot of times you have one person, in this case, God putting this on my heart, I can look and say this is my dream, but these guys here have helped me with that responsibility, and it's really appreciated.
When Greg came to me with this idea 2 years ago, I just thought it was a fantastic idea. The concept, what Greg wanted to accomplish with, the minority youth and the law enforcement officers. I was very impressed with, how, like Greg just said, everybody came together to make this work. As far as the state park and watercraft, I also saw this as a great opportunity, just like Greg said, to show these young people the recreational facilities that we have at the park, what the park has to offer. Maybe someday one of these young people will end up being a park officer or a park ranger or a park manager. We don't know. And, it opens the door for them. It's also a great opportunity for my staff, the park staff, to get involved in something that is bigger than we are. And we really appreciate Greg coming there and all the work that goes into it. I don't think out of all the events we have at Pymatuning, I would put this one as the most important event we hold all year.
The camp last year was outstanding. It was our first time. I was blessed to be involved from the beginning when shortly after Greg had the idea and talked to Prosecutor Irochi. I was a part of the original committee that met and we discussed it. And, we had a whole lot of ideas in the beginning. We weren't quite sure what to expect with all that we were trying to do. We were able to come down over a few months and come to a conclusion and a consensus of how we wanted to operate it, and it really went off last year without a glitch. It was my first time ever camping outside, ever. And first time I ever stayed in a tent. And it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. We had a lot of activities for the kids. It kept them busy all day. By nighttime, they were all really comatose because they had done a lot of stuff all day long. But the main thing is it really connected our kids with the law enforcement from various backgrounds. State Highway Patrol, County Sheriff's Department, local police, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources officers. So they got to see law enforcement in a different light and different activities that they did with them. So a lot of our kids went home with an idea of like, hey, I want to be one of those when I grow up. To me, that was worth everything, every effort that we put forth. The community support was really outstanding. We had a lot of donations and of money and items from pretty much every vendor that we approached. I think we're really on to something. I'm glad we included more of Trumbull County, and I expect this to actually be a statewide and different parts of the country activity, because there are other places looking at what we've done already and want to see how they can do it back in their community. So hats off to Greg for letting God speak to him and follow through with this.
Okay, just to talk a little bit about each child will get to go home with the Patchwork Foundation, which is from northern Trumbull County, donated backpacks last year. They're going to do that again this year. The backpacks are filled with food items, toiletry items. Also, there was gift certificates in there, and food and candy and different kind of things we stuffed in the backpacks last year. They go home with a brand new fishing pole. The fishing poles are donated by the Duck and Drake bait store down on Pymatuning Lake Road in Williamsfield. They get to go home with this. This is the first year for these water bottles. We had regular water bottles last year, but we found that those water bottles ended up all over the place, so we decided to try these this year. So they'll get to go home with that. And also they'll get to go home with a tackle box, a brand new tackle box. Derek Yop, who is a retired Geneva Police Department officer, has donated the backpacks. We also hired a photographer to go out on the scene and that went around over the period of 3 days and took photographs for, just for the kids. We actually have in a group picture, and then there's a team picture, and then an in-action type picture that they made a collage out of, and so they each get to go home with a picture of something to help. We have some other things in store for them this year to take home. The things I mentioned are going to be repeat things. We're going to do those again. As far as donations, we've gotten donations from all different, our FOPs in the county, all the FOPs in Ashtabula County. The Trumbull County Sheriff's Department FOP Lodge has also made a donation. We are partnering not only with Pymatuning State Park, but the Lake to River chapter of the American Red Cross has been great to us as far as they have allowed us the use of cots for the kids to sleep on. Ashtabula County EMA let us use their Zoomro tents, and the Zoomro tent basically are blow-up tents, and so it gave the kids shelter. We're working on different things as far as tents this year. We spoke to the recruiter in Ashtabula, and he's going to help us. The Youngstown Air Reserve Station is sending security officers up this year. They're also going to allow us to use tents from the Air Reserve Station. They're going to come set them up. Northwest Ambulance from Geneva, Vince Gildone, sent their first aid trailer or camper down, and he also sent personnel down for during the day in case a kid gets a cut, a scratch, for EMS purposes. So we have just had help from all different sectors when it comes to this, and donations. We're probably this year, we raised probably last year in cash or checks, I don't know, probably around $1,500 or $1,600. That doesn't count the in-kind services that were donated. Eddie's Grill donated hot dogs and hamburgers last year. They're going to do that again. The Giant Eagle stores in Saybrook and Geneva made donations, and they're going to do that again. We're actually still receiving or getting items and checks. We're still getting them in. As far as the kids themselves, they've been kind of, Steve has done a lot through the churches in the communities up north. Sally Bradley at Lakeside Schools has helped on that end. We've reached out to the schools in Geneva. Chris Cahill's done a lot with Pastor Tony up in Geneva to work on getting some kids, especially with the Hispanic descent, from that area. The one thing I want to point out, and is that this is directed towards 8 to 11-year-old minority children. We actually have had some 7-year-olds. We're probably going to have a couple 7-year-olds this year. And the reason, again, I want to reiterate, the big part of that is the fact that was the relationship between law enforcement and the minority community. We need to try to improve that, not only in Ashtabula County. I mean, all we can do is in our own community. It just is, the problem with it is that we have a tendency as a society to break up into groups. And when you break up into groups, you stop talking to each other. And that is a big part of this, is to try to end that. We're always going to have differences because the way we are raised, we're always going to have misunderstandings. But I think you got to have the ability, when you have that misunderstanding, to be able to communicate. You still may not agree, but you still have to have an open line of communication. And that's the whole principle behind this, is to try to help that. Before this all started, I knew of Steve. I mean, I've heard Steve's name over my 32 years here at the Sheriff's Office a bunch of times, but I never actually knew Steve. Now, I think if you talk to him, and I know it's for me, if I have an issue or something, I know I can pick up the phone and call Steve. And that's very important, because you're more likely to reach out to somebody you know than to somebody you don't know. Even if you know and have a name, it's harder to talk to somebody you don't know. Also, I look at this as future recruiting. I think a big problem here, especially in Ashtabula County, is that we have one African-American officer within the whole county. We have a couple Hispanic officers, but that is a problem. I think that we need to try to encourage these kids that this is something that is attainable. That's why Friday, when they come down on Friday night, we're going to have all the officers in uniform on Friday night when they get down there. Because we didn't do that last year, and Tony Blake actually made the suggestion last year on the post meeting that she thought that would be a great idea, and I think it is a great idea, that the kids will then see that contrast. They'll see the officers when they get down there, they'll see them in uniform, and then they're going to spend the rest of the weekend when the officers aren't in uniform. So it shows a good contrast, because unfortunately, a lot of these kids, all they do is see law enforcement in a negative light, and this is something that we want to try to improve on. And again, as far as the recruiting goes, we had kids on the bus ride down there. Sally Bradley told us this on the bus ride down last year. There was a lot of apprehension in these kids, and which is understandable. There was a lot of apprehension on my part. I was nervous because I didn't know what to expect. But she said on Saturday she had some of the same kids come to her and say, I want to be a cop. We're not trying to, we just want to show this is something that is attainable. That's why we have a lot of minority officers we're trying to get involved to come so they can show them on all different levels that this is something that is attainable. And even if it isn't, I want to, the public safety class over at the vocational school, I've talked to Van over there who teaches the public safety class. And even if it isn't law enforcement, I think we need, in Ashtabula County, we need to make sure that that is something that these kids see that they can do. I'm not saying that if you get out of Lakeside High School with a high school diploma, but if you go, I mean, it's underutilized, I guess, because when you get out of that school over there, you come out with a firefighting certificate and an EMS certificate. To me, that is, we want to show that as a viable option too, not just law enforcement, because I think there's issues in all safety services of there not being enough minorities in all of it. And a lot of it is, I think they get an idea that this is something that I can't afford, that it isn't attainable. But if, I mean, all it would take to go over to that class is to go there instead of try it for your 11th and 12th grade, and when you get out of high school, you have that certification. You go to a local fire department or EMS with that certification. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities there. So I think that's very important.
I was just amazed with the turnaround, if you want to say that, with the children from Friday to Saturday. When on Saturday they were having a ball. Mm-hmm. They were relaxed, they were communicating, they were involved, and that was just so great to see, you know, the change. And the other thing from the TARP point of view on that, 20 years from now, hopefully they have a memory of being there. We created a memory with Greg and his event, and I love that.
Sally Bradley is in charge of the CTAG program at Lakeside, which is closing the achievement gap. So she works with a number of students who may be challenged academically or socially, and they do a battery of things. They do have a camp that they go to annually. They do one for the females and they do one for the males, and she's involved in a lot of the activities that they do outside of school. She was our connection with the school system to give us referrals and recommendations for some of the guys in the elementary, on the elementary campus in the Asheville area city schools. So we were able to connect with some of them and go to the school and pick up their applications. And she was also a part of our planning committee and what have you. A lot of the ones that we have selected, like today I was at Lakeside and picked up applications at Lakeside, come to us through the school. They're recommended by maybe a teacher, principal, etc. that they feel a camp of this sort would be good for them. So that's how we are connected with them. And we've done, like, for my local church and other churches with some other pastors who had people in their congregation, kids who would benefit from this. Connecting these young young boys with law enforcement from a battery of background. It's not just a city policeman. You're talking state highway patrol, county sheriff, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. A lot of them never looked at police in a different light. I mean, they see city police, but they don't really deal with maybe state highway patrol or county sheriff, or definitely not the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. So when they have their minds open and their eyes open, their chances are broad. They have a greater perspective on policing, and some of them have been, now they desire to be a policeman because they've seen police in a different light and policing in a different light. We had a number of our policemen who were team leaders, so they were with the same group of like 10 the whole time they were there. They camped with them, they did their activities together, and a lot of times they didn't even know that was a policeman that was leading them. So it helped to inspire them. I know that we have a number of the young men from our church who are interested in law enforcement now because of what they experienced in the camp. Everyone that I've talked to liked everything. Actually, I have not received a single complaint from any of them about something that we did or didn't do during the camp, because we had a real good schedule. We kept them going. There wasn't, even if there was a little downtime, they played basketball. So there was just never a time when they were just sitting around waiting for a next event or something. Each team was always doing something. When you keep kids busy, it helps them with, staying occupied, burn off energy, and nothing's boring, and there was plenty of food. Everybody ate as much as they wanted. So when you're doing that with kids, really, you're not going to have any complaints, because they're having fun, they're enjoying each other's company, and by nighttime you hear them snoring because they worn themselves out.
Okay, again, just the Kids and Cops Campout is May 18th through the 20th. There'll be pickup points in Geneva, in Ashtabula, and one from the city of Warren. The one from the city of Warren is going to be at the YWCA off at North Park Avenue in the city of Warren. The one in Ashtabula is at Pastor Womack's church on West Avenue, People's Baptist Church. And the one in Geneva is at the school, I believe at the school. That, if we can get that, anybody who's be coming from Geneva, we can clarify that location. They will be picked up or bused from those points after school on Friday the 18th, and then they will be bused back to those points on Sunday afternoon. Premier Taxi, as one person I guess I didn't give a notice to, Premier Taxi, and they helped last year. They did all the busing for us from the Geneva area and also back and forth to the to Feed the Fish in Linesville on Sunday. They did all that free of charge. We have probably, I'm going to say, at various points, because a lot of the people can't stay the whole weekend either. So I'm going to say from Friday afternoon to Sunday, we probably have anywhere from 75 to 100 volunteers. We have ones that can stay all weekend. They're the team leaders and assistant team leaders that stay with these kids, sleep in the tents with them all weekend. But we have other ones through, like I said, the EMS. We have Eric Dietrich from the Ashtabula County Sheriff's Office has provided overnight security. Last year, he's going to do the same thing. That's free of charge. He's coming and giving of his time. And then, like I said, there are just as people coming and going. The extra eyes out there is very useful. Also, I think it's important for these kids to see, because not all the people that are volunteering are law enforcement. There's a lot of people that are citizens that are helping with the fishing, or that are just participating and helping support the program. So the primary idea is for law enforcement. We do have a lot of civilian non-law enforcement volunteers, and I really appreciate them.